Do you fear that moment in time when a prospect gives you an objection? Well, it doesn't have to be that way. You can become objection proof. Hi, I'm JeffCWest. I'm the award-winning author of 4 business and sales parables. I have over 30 years of successful sales and leadership experience across multiple industries. I've shared the stage, both in person and virtually, with legends like Bob Burg and Brian Tracy. I know what it takes to help you win in sales and leadership, and I'm here to help you do exactly that. So let's get started. In Bob Burg's and my sales parable, Streetwise to Saleswise, Become Objection Proof and Beat the Sales Blues, we tell the story of a young man named Thaddeus Tucker. He grew up on the streets of New Orleans and is a little bit of a wise mouth, and he ends up wisecracking his way out of a job and into a sales career for which he is totally unprepared. And the music and the food and the sights and sounds in New Orleans play heavily into the storyline that we crafted. I think you'd love the book even if you weren't learning the lessons in there. But in this parable, we teach how to take someone who has zero sales experience and get them prepared and get them successful over the course of a year. And we teach the leadership lessons and the sales lessons in the book. But the title of the book is really what I want to start with you today. I'm going to start a video series with you called Becoming Objection Proof. And it's so funny, when I hear that phrase, you can become objection proof, I'm reminded of the old Superman TV show where it says, you can become objection proof. Da, 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 da. I may edit that out. We'll see.
I don't think so. No.
We do teach a process where you can literally quit being afraid of objections and you can feel confident every time you walk into the scenario that you're going to have one. In the process of becoming objection proof, Bob Burg and I teach that there are 3 mindsets that we encourage you to embrace them before you even start that sales conversation. And in today's video, part 1, I am going to go through those with you. The first is to handle common objections during the sales conversation. You know, that goes against traditional sales training by some people. They say you should never bring up an objection because then you're laying the groundwork for your prospect to have that objection. And in some cases, that's absolutely true. But there are those objections that once you've been in your career a month or 2 months, you've probably heard a lot of what we call those baked-in objections. Objections that are pretty standard on your prospect's mind that you easily have a solution for. Well, if you bring those up during the actual sales conversation, along with a solution, then it becomes education. But if you don't bring those up and the prospect voices it at the end, then it's an objection. You have to work with it a little bit differently. I'll give you an example from the employee benefit arena that I was in. Our programs were very inexpensive. And I found that if I was explaining what the programs did, what the needs were, and all of that, and then gave the price at the end, which is where traditional sales training tells you to give the price, people were shocked at that point by how low cost the premiums were. And they would say, well, tell me what that does again, because they weren't listening during the other part. We called them presentations back then, but they weren't listening there because they didn't think they could afford it. So what I learned to do in my particular situation was I would bring up the price up front. The premiums were very low cost anyway. I would encourage them not to spend more than 1 hour's wage per week with us, or maybe an hour and a half's wages per week. So I geared them toward a low-cost program. And then I would say, so every program we have is affordable, so you can actually pick what you want in this case. When I did that, they began to pay attention during the sales conversation, and at the end, it was a much easier process to close the sale. The second point Bob and I make is the better your discovery questions, the fewer their objections. So you really want to plan out those questions. During that discovery phase of your sales conversation, you want that prospect to openly discuss the challenges they face, potential solutions that might work, which, by the way, you offer, and how their world gets different once they take advantage of your solution. You could tell them all those things yourself. You could tell them what their issues are and what your product can do and how their world changes after it's over. But at this stage, unless they already know, like, and trust you, what comes out of your mouth as the sales professional is not necessarily accepted as 100% accurate. You got me on that? So what we teach is ask the questions in such a way that they discuss it. Because if it comes out of your mouth, it may be suspect, but if it comes out of their mouth, it's the gospel truth. And if you ask the right questions, they'll tell you everything they need to hear. Again, I'll give you an example from my employee benefits days. I knew that our company, if we were working with an employer group and their employees were taking advantage of our programs, I knew that their benefit package would be more attractive so they could get a better worker in the hiring process. I knew they would retain their workers because their benefit package was better than the competitors. There were certain things that I knew in the mix of that. Now, I could have told the employer that, but I was the salesperson. So if it comes out of my mouth, it's not 100% accepted as truth. But if I asked the right question, they would tell me those things. And in this particular case, what I did was I tweaked a version of a question called basically, why do you offer insurance? But that was a little bit trite. So what I said to them each time was, Mr. Employer, with a lot of companies out there making a very difficult budget decision to either cut back on their benefit package or cut them out sometimes, you still offer a nice benefit package here. Do you mind if I ask you a question? Why do you still go to the expense and the trouble that you do? I commend you for the fact that you do it, but why do you do that? Well, then they would tell me, well, I need to attract a great worker. I need to keep them here once we have them. We need to retain them. And they would tell me all those same things, but instead of it coming out of my mouth, it came out of their mouth. So that was a very important part to do. The third thing that Bob and I teach is a mindset you need to have going in to your sales conversation if you really want to become objection proof is this: never try to overcome an objection. I know that sounds wrong at first, but here's the point behind that. Do you think about the word overcome? How many of you want to be overcome by anything other than maybe joy or happiness or money or something like that? Now, most people don't want to be overcome. And when you look at the root word of overcome, it means to conquer, to prevail against. And who wants to be conquered? I know I don't, and you don't. I always say an objection is a lot like an opinion. And you need to look no further than our political system in the U.S. to understand that people do not want their opinions overcome. So instead of trying to overcome an objection and making it a debate back and forth, she said, I said, they said, whoever, instead of doing that, we teach you never try to overcome an objection. Instead, use the process that I'll be teaching you in the next video where you work side by side with your prospect to find a solution that's best for them. So anyway, that's enough for today's video, and I'll talk to you again on the next one. Bye-bye.